The Greybeards welcomed you to High Hrothgar. You climbed 7,000 steps through freezing wind and prowling wolves. You passed the emblems of pilgrimage, the etched tablets telling the story of Jurgen Windcaller and his path of peace. You reached the ancient monastery at the roof of the world, and they greeted you as Dragonborn. They taught you the voice. They showed you words of power. They guided your first steps on the path that would lead you to defeat Alduin himself. They seemed wise, peaceful, enlightened. But the Greybeards are hiding something. Something about what the voice really is. Something about what it did before it became meditation. Something about why they live in isolation at the top of the world, speaking only in whispers, afraid of their own power. Tonight, I will show you the dark secret of High Hrothgar, the blood that stains the way of the voice, and the truth about the men who taught you to shout. Let us begin with what everyone knows. The Greybeards are an ancient order of monks who dedicate their lives to the study of the voice, the Thuum, the power to project your will into reality through spoken words. They live in High Hrothgar, the monastery near the peak of the throat of the world, the highest mountain in Skyrim. They have existed for thousands of years. They are revered throughout Nordic culture. When they speak, kingdoms listen. When they summoned you with your name, Dovahkiin, the sound echoed across all of Skyrim. They are pacifists. They use the voice only for worship and contemplation, never for violence. They follow the way of the voice, the philosophy established by their founder, Jurgen Windcaller. This is the story. This is what the pilgrims believe. This is what you believed, climbing those 7,000 steps. But stories have layers, and the deeper you dig into the Greybeards' history, the more troubling it becomes. Start with a simple question. Why do the Greybeards live in isolation? The surface answer is spiritual. They have withdrawn from the world to focus on their meditation. They seek enlightenment through contemplation of the voice. The mountain's height brings them closer to Kine, the goddess of the sky, whom they revere as the source of the tomb. But there is another answer, a practical answer. The Greybeards are dangerous. Not metaphorically dangerous, not philosophically dangerous, literally, physically dangerous. Their mastery of the voice is so complete that a single word spoken carelessly could kill everyone in the room. A sneeze could trigger an avalanche. A moment of anger could level a city. When the Greybeards greeted you at High Hrothgar, they spoke your name together, and the building shook. The stones cracked. The mountain itself trembled. That was a greeting. That was them being welcoming. Imagine what would happen if they were hostile. The Greybeards isolate themselves because they do not trust themselves. This is the first hint of what lies beneath. These are not confident masters at peace with their power. These are terrified men, clinging to ritual and discipline because they know what happens if they let go. They speak in whispers because their voices are weapons. They live apart because proximity to others is dangerous. They follow strict routines because routine prevents the emotional fluctuations that might trigger catastrophe. This is not enlightenment. This is containment. The Greybeards are not monks who chose the mountain. They are weapons that imprisoned themselves. Now let us talk about Jurgen Windcaller. Jurgen is the founder of the Greybeards, the creator of the Way of the Voice, the man who transformed the Thu'um from a tool of war into a path of peace. He lived in the First Era, over 4,000 years ago. He is revered as a saint, a visionary, a man who saw a better way. The official story goes like this. Jurgen was a great warrior. He fought in the armies of the ancient Nord Empire, using the voice as his weapon. He was powerful, perhaps the most powerful voice user of his generation. And then came the Battle of Red Mountain. In 1E 700, the Nord army invaded Morrowind, seeking to conquer the Dunmer and their Dwemer allies. It was a massive campaign, supported by the greatest warriors and voice masters of the Nordic people. They lost. Not just lost, were devastated. The Nord army was broken. The voice masters were killed or scattered. The invasion that was supposed to extend Nordic dominion ended in humiliation and death. Jurgen survived, and he asked himself a question. Why? According to the Way of the Voice, Jurgen's revelation was spiritual. He meditated on the defeat for 7 years. He sought understanding from Kine, the goddess who had given the voice to mortals. And he concluded that the Nords had lost because they had misused the voice. The Thu'um was a gift from the gods, meant for worship and contemplation. By using it as a weapon, the Nords had perverted its purpose. Their defeat was divine punishment for their arrogance. Jurgen developed a new philosophy. The voice should never be used for violence. It should be a path of peace, a tool for understanding the divine, a meditation rather than a weapon. He retreated to the throat of the world. He founded the Greybeards, and he spent the rest of his life teaching the Way of the Voice to those who would listen. This is the official story. It is not the complete story. Let me tell you what the official story leaves out. Before his revelation, Jurgen Windcaller was not just a warrior. He was a destroyer. The voice in his era was not a spiritual practice. It was a weapon of mass destruction. Voice masters were the nuclear arsenal of ancient Nord society, and Jurgen was one of the most powerful. How many people did Jurgen kill before his conversion? The histories do not say. But the implication is clear. Many. Hundreds, perhaps. Thousands, perhaps. He was a master of the voice in an era when the voice was used to burn cities and shatter armies. The man who founded the path of peace began as an instrument of death. This is not unusual in religious history. Many saints were sinners first. Conversion narratives often feature dramatic transformations from violence to peace, from sin to virtue. But there is something troubling about Jurgen's specific transformation. He did not renounce violence because violence was wrong. He renounced violence because it failed. Read his story carefully. The revelation came after defeat, after his side lost, after the voice proved insufficient to win the battle. If the Nords had won at Red Mountain, would Jurgen have had his spiritual awakening? Would he have concluded that the voice should only be used for worship? Or would he have continued killing, secure in the belief that the gods approved of his violence? The Way of the Voice is not built on moral principle. It is built on failure. Jurgen did not stop using the voice as a weapon because using it as a weapon was wrong. He stopped because using it as a weapon did not work. His philosophy emerged not from enlightenment, but from trauma. Not from revelation, but from defeat. This matters. A philosophy built on principle can withstand challenge. If violence is wrong because violence is wrong, then no circumstance can justify it. But a philosophy built on failure is different. If violence is wrong because violence failed, then success might make violence right again. The way of the voice has a crack in its foundation, and that crack has consequences. Consider how the Greybeards treat the Dragonborn. You are the first Dragonborn to appear in centuries. You have the inborn ability to absorb dragon souls and master shouts instantly. You are, potentially, the most powerful voice user since the ancient tongues themselves. And the Greybeards try to slow you down. They teach you, yes, but they teach you one word at a time, one shout at a time, at their pace rather than yours. They send you on pilgrimages and tests. They counsel patience, meditation, contemplation. They do not give you everything you need. Meanwhile, Alduin is destroying the world. Dragons are returning. Cities are burning. People are dying. The World Eater is preparing to consume everything. And the Greybeards want you to meditate. This is not wisdom. This is obstruction. They are deliberately limiting your power at the moment when you need power most. Why? The surface explanation is philosophical. The Greybeards believe that mastery takes time. They believe that rushing leads to corruption. They believe that the voice must be understood before it can be wielded. But there is another explanation. The Greybeards are afraid of what you might become. They have seen what happens when voice masters go to war. They carry the memory of Jurgen's era, when the Thu'um was used to commit atrocities. They know, better than anyone, how easily power corrupts. And here you are, a Dragonborn, with more potential power than any voice user in history, asking them to help you become stronger. They look at you, and they see Jurgen before his conversion. They see the destroyer they used to serve. They see everything they have spent 4,000 years trying to contain, and they are terrified. The Greybeards do not trust you. They welcome you. They honor you. They call you Dragonborn and bow before your destiny. But they do not trust you. Every limitation they place on your training is a test. Every delay is a chance for you to prove that you will not become what they fear. Every lecture about patience is really a question. Will you control the voice, or will the voice control you? They are not training you. They are evaluating you. And if you fail their evaluation, if you show too much eagerness for power, too little respect for restraint, what happens then? There is one more thing the Greybeards hide. At the peak of the throat of the world, above High Hrothgar, lives Paarthurnax, a dragon. Not a dead dragon, not a hostile dragon, a living dragon, ancient beyond measure, who has been sitting on that mountaintop for 4,000 years. The Greybeards' master, their teacher, the being they have been learning from since Jurgen founded the Order. They do not tell you about him. You only discover Paarthurnax because the main quest forces you to. The Greybeards would have kept his existence secret forever if they could. Why? Paarthurnax. The name means ambition, overlord, cruelty in the dragon language. This is not a name given to peaceful creatures. This is not a name earned through meditation and contemplation. This is a name earned through blood. When you first meet Paarthurnax, he seems gentle, wise. He speaks in philosophical riddles, discusses the nature of time and change, treats you with respect and curiosity. He is unlike any dragon you have encountered, calm where others are aggressive, thoughtful where others are violent. He teaches you the shout you need to defeat Alduin. He provides guidance when the Greybeards cannot. He seems like an ally, perhaps even a friend. But Paarthurnax has a past, and that past is soaked in blood. 4,000 years ago, Paarthurnax was not a philosopher. He was a general. Alduin's general. During the Dragon War, when dragonkind ruled over mortals as gods and tyrants, Paarthurnax was one of Alduin's most trusted lieutenants. He enforced dragon rule. He crushed rebellions. He killed, and worse than killed, any who dared resist. The dragon cult that oppressed ancient humanity? Paarthurnax helped build it. The system of terror that kept mortals enslaved for generations? Paarthurnax enforced it. Every atrocity committed by dragonkind during that era, Paarthurnax was complicit in. He was not a foot soldier following orders. He was leadership. He was command. He was the cruelty his name describes. And then he changed sides. During the Dragon War, Paarthurnax betrayed Alduin. He turned against his master, his kin, his entire species. He went to the ancient Nords and taught them the Thu'um, the weapon they needed to fight back against their oppressors. Without Paarthurnax, humanity might never have learned the voice. Without his betrayal, the Dragon War might have been lost. Without him, Alduin would never have been defeated. He is the reason you exist as Dragonborn. He is the reason humanity is free.
And he is also a war criminal who spent centuries committing atrocities.
The Greybeards know all of this. They know who Paarthurnax was. They know what he did. They have spent 4,000 years learning from a being who once helped enslave their ancestors. And they chose to hide this from the world. Why? The simplest answer is protection. If the people of Skyrim knew that a dragon, any dragon, lived atop the throat of the world, they would demand its death. If they knew that this specific dragon was Alduin's former general, they would march up those 7,000 steps with torches and weapons. The Greybeards hide Paarthurnax because revealing him would destroy him. But there is a deeper reason. Paarthurnax represents something the Greybeards desperately want to believe: that change is possible, that the violent can become peaceful, that the monster can become the sage. Jurgen Windcaller was a killer who became a monk. He founded the Greybeards on the belief that the voice could be transformed from weapon to worship. Paarthurnax is the ultimate validation of that belief. If a dragon, a creature literally born to dominate and destroy, can overcome his nature and choose peace, then anyone can. If Paarthurnax can change, then Jurgen's conversion was not a fluke. Then the way of the voice is not just philosophy, it is truth. The Greybeards need Paarthurnax to be redeemed, because if he is not redeemed, then perhaps they are not either. But is Paarthurnax actually redeemed? He addresses this question directly when you speak with him. He is surprisingly honest about his struggle. What is better, he asks, to be born good or to overcome your evil nature through great effort? This sounds profound. It sounds like wisdom. But listen to what he is actually saying. He is not claiming to have conquered his nature. He is claiming to be constantly fighting it. Every day, for 4,000 years, he has struggled against the urge to dominate, to destroy, to become what he was. Paarthurnax is not peaceful. Paarthurnax is contained, just like the Greybeards themselves. The Blades see this clearly. When you discover Paarthurnax, Delphine, and Esbern, the last of the Blades, demand that you kill him. They are not being irrational. They are not being bloodthirsty. They are applying a simple principle. Dragons are dangerous, and this dragon has proven exactly how dangerous dragons can be. The Blades have spent centuries protecting Tamriel from existential threats. They have institutional memory that stretches back to the Dragon War. They know what Paarthurnax did, not as abstract history, but as detailed records of specific atrocities. And they know something else. Dragons do not change. Dragons are not like mortals. They are immortal spirits of time, bound to specific natures. A dragon's name is not just a label, it is their essence. Parthenax is ambition overlord cruelty, because that is what he fundamentally is. Mortals can change because mortals are finite. We grow, we learn, we become different people over time. The person you are at 60 is not the person you were at 20. But dragons do not grow. They do not age. They do not transform through lived experience the way mortals do. When Parthenax changed, he did not become a different being. He began suppressing his fundamental nature through constant effort. The cruelty is still there. The ambition is still there. The desire to dominate is still there. He is simply choosing, moment by moment, not to act on it. 4,000 years of choosing. 4,000 years of fighting himself. 4,000 years of being one bad day away from reverting to what he was. Is that redemption? Or is that a time bomb? The Greybeards say that Parthenax has proven himself through millennia of peace, that his actions speak louder than his nature, that judging him for what he was, rather than what he has become, is unjust. The Blades say that his nature is what he is, that 4,000 years of good behavior does not erase centuries of atrocity.
That the moment his self-control slips, and after 4,000 years of struggle, eventually it must slip, he will become the monster again. The game forces you to choose between them. But consider what this choice reveals about the Greybeards. They are asking you to trust a dragon. Not just any dragon, the dragon who trained them. The dragon who taught them everything they know about the voice. The dragon whose philosophy forms the foundation of their entire order. The Greybeards are not neutral in this conflict. They cannot be. Their identity, their purpose, their entire reason for existing is bound up with Parthenax and his teachings. If Parthenax is unredeemable, then the Greybeards are fools who spent 4,000 years learning from a monster. If his nature cannot be overcome, then neither can theirs. They defend Parthenax because they have to, because the alternative is admitting that everything they believe is wrong. Now let us talk about what the Greybeards actually teach. The way of the voice has a core principle. The Thu'um should not be used as a weapon. It is a gift from Kine meant for worship and understanding, not violence and domination. But this principle has an exception: the Dragonborn. When the Greybeards recognize you as Dragonborn, they acknowledge that the rules are different for you. You are permitted, even expected, to use the voice in combat. You are not bound by the way of the voice in the same way they are. Why? The surface explanation is destiny. The Dragonborn exists to fight dragons. You cannot fight dragons without using the voice as a weapon. Therefore, your violence is sanctioned by the gods themselves. But think about what this actually means. The Greybeards have spent 4,000 years teaching that the voice should never be used for violence. And then you walk in, and suddenly violence is acceptable. Their principle is not a principle. It is a rule with convenient exceptions. This selective application reveals something important.
The Greybeards do not believe that violence is inherently wrong. They believe that violence is wrong for them, because of their history, because of Jurgen's defeat, because of what they did in the past. But violence by others? Violence for the right cause? Violence sanctioned by destiny? That is fine. This is not wisdom. This is rationalization. The Greybeards have created a philosophy that allows them to feel moral while avoiding the burden of action. They have withdrawn from the world, refused to use their power, and called this virtue. Meanwhile, the world suffers. Dragons attack villages. Alduin prepares to devour reality. Innocent people die because the most powerful voice users in existence have decided that helping would compromise their principles. The Greybeards let others do the violence they consider themselves too enlightened to perform. Consider the Dragonborn's situation. You are summoned to High Hrothgar. You are told that you have a great destiny. You are trained in the voice. And then you are sent out into the world to kill. The Greybeards do not kill dragons. They do not fight Alduin. They do not risk their lives or souls in the conflict that will determine the fate of everything. They train you to do it for them. This is not mentorship. This is delegation. The Greybeards have found a loophole in their philosophy. They cannot use the voice as a weapon, but they can train someone else to use the voice as a weapon. They cannot fight, but they can create a fighter. Their hands stay clean, their principles stay intact, and the Dragonborn does the dirty work they consider themselves above. There is a word for this: hypocrisy. The Greybeards preach peace while enabling war. They condemn violence while training killers. They claim moral superiority while letting others bear the moral burden of necessary action. The way of the voice is not a philosophy of peace. It is a philosophy of avoidance, dressed up in spiritual language to hide its fundamental cowardice. And the worst part? They know. Arngeir, the only Greybeard who speaks freely, shows flashes of doubt throughout your interactions. He questions whether training you is wise. He worries about what you might become. He struggles with the contradiction between their principles and their actions. He knows the way of the voice is compromised. He knows they are creating a weapon while preaching against weapons. He knows they are hypocrites. And he does it anyway. Because the alternative, actually living their principles, actually refusing to participate in violence even indirectly, would mean letting Alduin win. The Greybeards are not wise men at peace with their choices. They are conflicted men, trapped between their ideals and reality, compromising constantly while pretending they are not. High Hrothgar is not a monastery. It is a prison. For men who do not trust themselves with power, who are afraid of what they might do if they engaged with the world, who have built an entire philosophy around the avoidance of difficult choices. And you, Dragonborn, are their escape route. You make the choices they cannot make. You do the violence they cannot do. You bear the moral weight they have spent 4,000 years hiding from. They welcome you to High Hrothgar because they need you. Not to learn from them, to fight for them. Let us talk about what the voice actually is. Not what the Greybeards say it is. Not the sanitized version, the spiritual meditation, the worship of Kine. What it actually, fundamentally is. The voice is imposition. When you shout, you are projecting your will onto reality. You are forcing the world to conform to your intention. The word becomes real because you make it real. Through power, through force, through the absolute certainty that what you say must be. Fus Roda does not politely ask objects to move. It slams them backward with the force of your conviction. Yol Tur Shul does not gently warm things. It burns them with the fire of your will. Every shout, at its core, is an act of dominance. You are saying, reality will be what I declare it to be. The dragons understood this perfectly. To dragons, the voice is not a tool, it is their nature. They do not learn to shout the way mortals do. They shout because speaking their truth into existence is what dragons are. When Alduin says a word, the word becomes real because Alduin's will is powerful enough to make it so. This is not magic in the conventional sense. This is a being whose essence is so strong that reality bends around it. Dragons dominate because domination is what they are. The voice is simply how that domination expresses itself. Now consider what the Greybeards are doing. They have taken this power, this fundamentally aggressive, dominance-based force, and they are trying to use it for meditation. They are trying to transform imposition into contemplation. It is like trying to use a sword for gardening. You can do it, technically, but you are fighting the nature of the tool. The Greybeards spend decades mastering a single word. Not because the words are difficult to pronounce. You, as Dragonborn, can absorb them instantly. They spend decades because they are trying to drain the violence out of each syllable.
They meditate on Fus not to become better at pushing, but to understand pushing so deeply that they no longer need to push. They contemplate Yol not to burn more effectively, but to comprehend fire so thoroughly that fire becomes a concept rather than a weapon. This is an enormous amount of effort spent doing what exactly? Neutralizing their own power, containing their own capability, ensuring that the weapon they have forged can never be used. The Greybeards are not masters of the voice. They are jailers of the voice. Their entire practice is built around suppression. They have spent 4,000 years developing techniques not to use the Thu'um more effectively, but to use it less, to speak without destroying, to exist without imposing. This is presented as wisdom, as enlightenment, as spiritual achievement, but it is also waste. Consider what the Greybeards could do if they chose to act. There are 4 of them at High Hrothgar. 4 masters who have spent decades perfecting their command of the voice. 4 men whose combined shout can shake mountains. And there is Paarthurnax, an ancient dragon, one of the most powerful beings in existence, who has had 4,000 years to refine his already godlike abilities. Together, they represent more concentrated Thu'um power than has existed anywhere in Tamriel since the ancient tongues. What could they accomplish if they used that power? Dragons attack Skyrim throughout the game. They burn villages. They kill farmers and guards and children. They cause suffering that echoes through communities for generations. The Greybeards do nothing. They sit on their mountain, meditating, while people die below. They have the power to stop the attacks, or at least to help. They choose not to use it. Why? Because using the voice as a weapon would violate their principles. Let me describe what principle looks like in practice. A dragon attacks Riverwood. It circles the town, breathing fire, setting roofs ablaze. The guards fight back with arrows that barely scratch its scales. People run, scream, die. On the throat of the world, the Greybeards meditate. They can feel the dragon's presence. They can sense its shouts rippling through the fabric of reality. They know exactly what is happening. They do not move. A family huddles in their burning home. A mother shields her children with her body. The dragon's fire grows closer. There is no escape. The Greybeards contemplate the nature of Yol. The children die. The Greybeards' principles remain intact. This is the cost of the way of the voice. Every death that the Greybeards could have prevented and did not
is on their hands. Every village burned while they meditated. Every innocent killed while they contemplated the spiritual meaning of destruction. They have chosen their philosophy over human lives, and they call this wisdom. You might argue that this is unfair, that we cannot expect everyone with power to use it constantly, that having the ability to help does not create an obligation to help. But the Greybeards are not ordinary people. They have explicitly dedicated their lives to the voice. They have removed themselves from normal society specifically to focus on this one thing. And when the dragons return, the exact threat that the voice was originally developed to counter, they refuse to engage. This is not neutrality. This is abdication. The ancient tongues used the voice to fight dragons. That was its purpose. That was why Kine gave it to mortals in the first place, so they could defend themselves against dragonkind. The Greybeards have taken this gift and locked it away. They have decided that the gift is too dangerous, too corrupting, too spiritually hazardous to use for its intended purpose. They have overruled the goddess who gave it to them, and people die because of that decision. Now consider the Dragonborn's relationship with the Greybeards in this context. They train you to fight. They teach you shouts that are explicitly designed for combat. They send you out to kill dragons, but they will not fight alongside you. You face Alduin alone. You battle through Sovngarde alone. You bear the weight of saving reality alone. The Greybeards contribute their knowledge, then retreat to safety. They train the weapon, then let the weapon take all the risks. There is a moment in the main quest that reveals this clearly. When you need to learn Dragonrend, the shout that can force dragons to experience mortality, the Greybeards cannot help you. They do not know it. They have never learned it. Why? Because Dragonrend is pure violence. It is a shout with no meditative application, no spiritual interpretation. It exists only to harm dragons. The ancient tongues created it out of hatred, out of the fury and desperation of enslaved humanity fighting for survival. It is the Thu'um stripped of all pretense, reduced to its essential nature as a weapon. The Greybeards refuse to learn it, even though it might be the only thing that can stop Alduin, even though the fate of the world might depend on it. They would not compromise their principles by mastering a shout that exists purely to cause harm. So you have to find another way. You have to use an Elder Scroll, travel through time, learn from the ancient tongues directly. The Greybeards' commitment to non-violence nearly dooms the world. And here is the darkest part. Paarthurnax knows Dragonrend. He was there when it was created. He heard the ancient tongues scream it at his kin. He felt its effect, the terrible forced understanding of mortality that cripples dragons. He could teach it to you directly, but he does not. When you meet him, he tells you that you need to learn it from the past, from the original tongues. He sends you on the quest for the Elder Scroll instead of simply teaching you himself. Why? The optimistic interpretation is that he cannot teach it, that Dragonrend is somehow unteachable, that it must be experienced to be understood. But there is another interpretation. Paarthurnax does not want to speak those words again, even to save the world, even to stop Alduin. The memory of what Dragonrend did to him, what it forced him to understand, is too painful. He would rather send you on a dangerous quest through time than confront that memory. This is the Greybeard philosophy in its purest form. Avoid the difficult thing. Find another way. Let someone else bear the burden. Even when avoidance costs lives. Even when another way is dangerous and uncertain. Even when the burden you're passing is heavier than anything you've ever carried.
The Greybeards protect their own peace at the expense of everyone else's survival. I am not saying the Greybeards are evil. Evil requires intention to harm. The Greybeards do not want people to die. They do not celebrate the suffering their inaction causes, but they accept it. They have made a calculation. Their spiritual purity is worth more than the lives they could save. Their principles matter more than the people those principles let die. This is not evil, but it is not wisdom either. It is selfishness dressed in robes of enlightenment. The way of the voice is not a path to peace. It is a path to absolution. The Greybeards want to be free of the guilt that comes with power. They want to possess the ability to kill without ever having to choose whether to use it. They want clean hands in a world that requires dirty ones. And they have built an entire philosophy to justify that desire. Jurgen Windcaller did not find enlightenment on that mountain. He found escape. Escape from the consequences of his violence. Escape from the responsibility of his power. Escape from the world he had helped destroy. He called it the way of the voice, but it was really the way of hiding. And his followers have been hiding ever since. I have been harsh on the Greybeards, perhaps too harsh. Let me now offer the other side. Let me present the argument they would make in their own defense. Because moral complexity requires that we understand even those we criticize. The Greybeards would say this: you do not understand what power does to a person. You, Dragonborn, have had the voice for months, perhaps a year. You have used it in battle, felt its rush, experienced the intoxication of imposing your will on reality. Now imagine having that power for decades, centuries. Imagine every moment of anger, every flash of frustration, every petty grievance, all of them capable of killing. They would say, we have seen what happens when voice masters go to war. Not in books, not in legends, in memory. The oldest among us carry the institutional knowledge of what Jurgen's generation did. The cities they burned, the armies they destroyed, the innocents they killed because they were in the way. Power corrupts. Not sometimes, always. The question is not whether the voice will corrupt its user, but how long that corruption takes. They would say, the way of the voice is not cowardice, it is prevention. We do not hide from battle because we fear death. We hide from battle because we fear what we would become if we fought. We fear the pleasure we would take in destruction. We fear the ease with which we could kill. You call us selfish for protecting our principles, but our principles protect everyone from us. They would say, look at history. Every voice master who went to war eventually became a monster. The ancient tongues were heroes once. They fought dragons, liberated humanity, saved their people from enslavement. And then they turned on each other. And then they invaded Morrowind, seeking conquest. And then they died at Red Mountain, their power proven useless against forces that did not care how loud they could shout. The voice does not make heroes. The voice makes weapons. And weapons, given enough time, always find the wrong targets. They would say, we chose another path, not because we are better than the warriors of old, because we know we are not. Because we know that given enough power, enough time, enough justification, we would become what they became. The way of the voice is not about being good. It is about acknowledging that we are not good, and choosing structures that prevent our badness from causing harm. This is a compelling argument. It acknowledges human weakness. It recognizes the corrupting influence of power. It takes seriously the historical evidence of what voice masters have done when they engaged with the world. And it raises a question that I cannot easily answer. Is it better to have power and risk misusing it, or to have power and ensure it is never used at all? The Greybeards have chosen the second option. They have looked at the calculus of power, the good it can do versus the harm it inevitably causes, and they have concluded that abstention is the safest path. Not the most heroic path, not the path that maximizes good, but the path that minimizes evil. And there is something to be said for this. The hero's journey is seductive. We love stories of powerful beings using their gifts to save the world. We want to believe that power can be wielded responsibly, that good intentions lead to good outcomes, that strength in service of justice is always justified. But history, real history, not just the Elder Scrolls, tells a different story. Power corrupts. Institutions built on violence become violent. Heroes become tyrants. The sword raised to defend eventually falls on the innocent. The Greybeards know this. They have lived it. They carry the memory of what happened when voice masters believed themselves heroes. Their withdrawal is not ignorance. It is hard-won wisdom. But, and this is the crucial but, withdrawal has costs too. The Greybeards have avoided becoming monsters. They have prevented their power from being misused. They have kept their hands clean for 4,000 years. And during those 4,000 years, people have died who might have been saved. This is the moral dilemma at the heart of the Greybeard story. There is no clean option. There is no path without victims. If the Greybeards engage with the world, they risk becoming what they fear. Another generation of voice masters drunk on power, causing more harm than they prevent. If the Greybeards withdraw from the world, they guarantee that some harm will occur that they could have stopped. Villages burned, innocents killed, suffering that their intervention might have prevented. Either way, there is blood. The only question is whose. The Greybeards have chosen to accept passive responsibility, the blood of those they could have saved but did not. They have rejected active responsibility, the blood of those they might harm if they acted. Neither choice is clean. Neither choice is obviously correct. Both involve accepting that people will die because of decisions you made. I criticized the Greybeards earlier for hypocrisy, for training you to fight while refusing to fight themselves, for preaching peace while enabling violence. But perhaps this is not hypocrisy. Perhaps this is the best solution they could find to an impossible problem. They cannot fight without risking corruption, but they also cannot let Alduin win without risking annihilation. So they compromise. They train a champion who can fight. They provide knowledge and guidance. And they stay behind, maintaining their principles, hoping that you can do what they cannot. Is this cowardice? Or is it the only responsible use of their position? I do not know. And that uncertainty is perhaps the most important thing about the Greybeards. They are not simple villains hiding selfishness behind philosophy. They are not simple sages whose wisdom should be unquestioningly accepted. They are complex beings, making difficult choices in a world that does not offer easy answers. Like all of us. Let me tell you what I think we can learn from High Hrothgar. First, power requires reckoning. The Greybeards are right about one thing. Power does corrupt, and anyone who wields it must confront that corruption honestly.
Their mistake is not in recognizing this truth. Their mistake is in thinking that withdrawal is the only response. But we should not make the opposite mistake. We should not pretend that power is neutral, that good intentions guarantee good outcomes, that the hero's sword never strikes the innocent. If you have power, any power, you must think seriously about how it changes you. You must build structures that check your worst impulses. You must remain humble about your capacity for harm. Second, inaction is a choice. The Greybeards treat their withdrawal as a neutral position. They are not choosing violence or peace. They are simply stepping back, letting events unfold without their interference. But this is an illusion. Inaction is a choice. Withdrawal is a choice. Every moment the Greybeards spend meditating while villages burn, they are choosing to let those villages burn. There is no neutral position. There is only action or inaction, each with its own consequences, each with its own moral weight. Third, principles must be held lightly. The way of the voice is beautiful as a philosophy. The idea that power should be used only for contemplation, never for harm, is appealing. It speaks to our desire for a clean path, a clear answer. But principles that cannot bend will eventually break, or break the people who hold them. The Greybeards' commitment to nonviolence is so absolute that it prevents them from acting even when action is desperately needed. Their principles have become more important than the reality those principles were meant to serve. A principle that lets innocent people die rather than compromise is not wisdom. It is idolatry, the worship of an idea at the expense of flesh and blood. Fourth, we are all the Greybeards. It is easy to criticize from outside, easy to say they should fight, when we are not the ones who would have to bear the consequences. Easy to demand action when we have not spent 4,000 years watching voice masters become monsters. But we all make Greybeard choices. Every time we avoid a difficult conversation because it might go badly. Every time we refuse to use our skills because we might fail. Every time we withdraw from a conflict because engaging feels too risky. We are all seeking clean hands in a world that does not offer them. The Greybeards are just more honest about it. High Hrothgar sits at the roof of the world, shrouded in cloud, separated from the chaos below. It is beautiful up there, peaceful. The air is thin but clean. The silence is profound. I understand why someone would want to stay. I understand why someone would build a philosophy that justifies staying. I understand the fear of power, the memory of harm, the desperate desire to be good in a world that makes goodness so difficult. But the clouds part sometimes, and when they do, you can see Skyrim spread out below, the villages, the cities, the people living their small lives, unaware of the power that watches from above. Those people need help. Not always, not constantly, but sometimes. And when they do, the Greybeards are not there. The Greybeards are meditating, and the villages burn. You are Dragonborn. You have power the Greybeards only dream of. You can absorb dragon souls, master shouts instantly, grow stronger with every battle. You are what they fear becoming. And you have a choice. You can follow their path, retreat to the mountain, meditate on your power, ensure that your hands stay clean. You can let others fight the battles, bear the burdens, make the impossible choices. Or you can engage, risk corruption, risk failure, risk becoming a monster. But also risk, just possibly, making things better. The Greybeards cannot tell you which to choose. They have made their choice. It has costs they will never fully acknowledge. But it is their choice, and they must live with it. You must make your own. Sleep now. The mountain is quiet. The wind has stilled. The 7,000 steps wait for the next pilgrim, the next seeker, the next person looking for answers that High Hrothgar cannot quite provide. The Greybeards will be there when you wake, still meditating, still contemplating, still hiding from the world they have the power to save. And you will still have to decide what to do with your own power. There are no easy answers. There never were. But the question is worth asking. And the asking, the honest, difficult asking, might be the closest thing to wisdom any of us can find. Rest now. The world continues. And tomorrow, there will be choices to make.